I have a confession to make. While I'm great at making TBRs, I'm awful at keeping with them. I make TBRs and then I just rarely read the books on the TBR. It's honestly almost an addiction. If you are new here, hi, I'm Carol, and in this channel we talk mainly about books, but today we are going to try and read some of the books that have been on my recent TBRs, and hopefully I will be able to finish them. The first book we are going to be reading for this video won't be exactly a full book, even though I would argue it is a full novel. It's just a shorter one, but it is technically a novella, and it is Scorched Roses by Carissa Broadbent. This, from what I know, is the book that comes after The Serpent and the Wings of Night, which is the first book in the Crowns of Nyaxa series, and it comes in between the first book and the second book in this series. And in this novella we don't follow the main characters, but we follow two other characters, a human and a vampire, and there is some sort of romance going on. So it will probably be a romantasy, just like the other two books, just like the first book in the series, and that's all I know. It is short or shorter, it won't be 500 pages long, it might be a fast read hopefully. And yes, let me stop talking and start reading the book, because honestly today is kind of a great day to read, but also to read this book in particular, because it is cold, even though it shouldn't be cold where I am, at least not today. Today was a very gloomy day, and right now it's like 8 p.m. and I'm filming this at 8 p.m. because I want to read the book. Also, I didn't wake up in the best of moods today. It's not that I'm in a bad mood, it's just not the best of moods, and I'm just in the vibe. I just want to read something that is really fun and maybe a little bit spooky. So let's get to reading Scorched Roses, and I'll come back when I have any update for you. Hi, so it's been a few days and I'm actually re-recording this review, because in the last one my hair was in a horrific state, and today my hair is still not in the best of states. We are trying to figure out what is the rebellion with my hair this time around. But basically I finished reading Scorched Roses, and I actually finished reading that book in one day, which, yes, it is a shorter book, it is only 200 and something pages long. But I personally rarely finish a book in one day. It's rare for me to read 200 pages of one single book in one day, because I'm more of a book hopper. I tend to read a little bit of a book and then sit in with the book and then read another one. I always read multiple books at once. And with Scorched Roses, how can I say it? The experience was different. So let's first talk about what this book is actually about. So Scorched Roses is technically a novella, even though I would rather just call it a book, because the fact that it is shorter for me, it just means that it is a shorter book. But technically, Scorched Roses is a novella that takes place in the same universe as the Crowns of Nyaxa series or the Serpent and the Wings of Night book. It takes place in the same universe, but instead of taking place in Orbitries, how exactly to pronounce the name of the word, I'm not sure. Basically, instead of taking place in the vampire world, Scorched Roses takes place in the human lands, and we follow Lord Vale, who is a centuries-old vampire who used to be this general in Orbitries, and he used to be part of the clan that was taken out of power by the king in The Serpents and the Wing of Night. And basically after his clan fell out of power, he fled, he went to live in the human world. And then we have Lilith, who is one of the top scientists in her area, in the human lands. And basically Lilith, she lives in this small village who has been cursed by their god, and basically for the past 10 years there has been this plague that has been killing off the people in her village for the past 10 years. And there is no cure for this plague. There isn't necessarily a reason for this plague except that the god cursed their land. And Lilith's sister, she's currently sick, and Lilith is desperate to find a cure for this disease. And a little detail about Lilith is that she has always been in touch with death in some sort of way, because Lilith, she was born with an autoimmune disease, a mysterious autoimmune disease. She was technically born dead, but then she came back alive. And by the start of the book, she's 30 years old, but the fact that she managed to get to 30 years old is a miracle, because Lilith should have been dead because of her disease. And the book opens with Lilith deciding to go to visit Lord Vale for the first time, and because she wants access to his blood, she wants to explore and study his blood to see if that can help her create a cure for this plague. But as the book progresses, they go from Lord Vale kind of being annoyed with her to becoming a friendship, and Six Scorched Roses is a romantasy, so there is a romance in this book. And differently from The Serpent and the Wings of Night, which was a very dark book, Six Scorched Roses, it is still dark, but it is way more romantic. This book was way more romantic than I was expecting it. The only way I can think of describing this book, because this is something this book reminds me of, and it sounds ridiculous to compare these two books because they have nothing in common, absolutely nothing in common, but for some reason, reading Six Scorched Roses reminds me of reading Pride and Prejudice. And again, these two books have nothing in common except for the yearning and the fact that I love Pride and Prejudice and I love Six Scorched Roses. I just love the fact that this centuries-old vampire was so desperate to talk with Lilith that he started sending her letters. Six Scorched Roses was just such a pleasant surprise. I knew I liked the first book in the Crowns of Nyaxia series, I knew I liked The Serpent and the Wings of Night. I wasn't expecting it to like Six Scorched Roses so much. It's definitely different from the first book in the series. It's technically a standalone, it is kind of connected, but you don't need to read one book in the series to read the other. But I think it might be a good idea to read Six Scorched Roses if you are reading The Serpent and the Wings of Night, that particular series, because apparently the two main characters from Six Scorched Roses will start appearing in the next books in the series, and I was already excited to read the second book in the Crowns of Nyaxia series. After actually reading that these two characters from Six Scorched Roses will be in the sequel, I'm even more excited to read that book because I want to see them more. And if you can't already tell, I gave Six Scorched Roses 5 stars because I'm trying to be more, not happy, more positive. I'm trying to not gatekeep 5 stars so much, and I can put a fault. I don't have any fault to talk about in Six Scorched Roses. It was such a great book. This book proves that yes, you can write a good book with only 200 pages, and if you are looking for a good romantasy, a good romantic book, if you want the same feeling, if you have already read Pride and Prejudice and just like me you love Pride and Prejudice and you want something that might give similar feelings, I suggest trying Six Scorched Roses, even though, again, these two books have absolutely nothing in common. I think it's wild that I'm comparing the both of them. The only reason that Six Scorched Roses reminded me of Pride and Prejudice is because of the yearning. It's because they are both only one POV and there's yearning. And we love a good yearning. That's the best part of a romance novel. So, yes. Six Scorched Roses is a 5 stars, and now I want to read the sequel for the Crowns of Nyaxia series. After I finished reading Six Scorched Roses, I wanted to read something that was kind of the opposite because I just loved that book so much that I had a feeling that if I read anything that was fantasy related, I might not enjoy it as much because I just loved that book so much. So I wanted something that could take place in the Now world, in real world. I wanted something that wasn't fantasy or sci-fi or no magical element at all. I wanted something that wasn't dark. And then when I went to have a look at my recent TBRs, at least by the time I'm filming this video, there wasn't that many options. There were actually only 2 options in the list. There was either Hat-Trick by Chelsea Curto or Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood. And then I decided to read Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood because I just wanted to read this book for a while now. I am desperate to read Problematic Summer Romance by this author, and I know Problematic Summer Romance, it technically comes after Not in Love because it follows the sister and the best friend from the male main character in Not in Love. So I ended up picking, again, Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood. Also, I know Ali is an author I really enjoy. I liked every single thing I read by this author so far. They never fail to make me have a great time. They never fail to entertain me. And recently, I've been feeling like I have been in a reading slump. I'm not sure exactly by the time I'm filming this video. I'm not sure what is the order of the videos that I'm going to be posting, but maybe it will come after this video. Maybe I will have already posted that video, but I've been feeling like I'm kind of in a reading slump lately, and Scorched seems to have pulled me out of that reading slump, and I'm really in the mood to read. And Ali Hazelwood, I know that this author, she's great at making me want to read. She's also great at making me getting me out of reading slumps because I just love the way she writes books. But basically, Not in Love follows Rue and Eli. Rue, she is how do I say it in English? Because I'm reading this book, literally, I'm reading this book translated to Portuguese because the English edition of this book was sold out. So I got the edition that was translated to Portuguese. But she is, I think, a food engineer, and Eli, he owns this finance company, this venture capital company, and his company is basically doing a hostile takeover of the company who works at, and Rue, she's really close to the owner and the founder of this company, and she really likes her company, so she's not very happy with Eli. But the thing about these 2 characters is that they first meet during a date because they match on a dating app, they agree to go on a date, and then the day after they go on this date, they find out that Eli is basically planning to do a hostile takeover for Rue's company. And while they really got along in their first date, because of their current situation, Rue is not very happy with Eli, so she decides to get some space from him. But for some reason, these 2, they just can't get away from each other. There seems to just have this force that keep pulling Eli and Rue together. They now keep seeing each other in the most random places. They keep meeting up in the most random ways, and that's kind of the premise of Not in Love. And I'm already a little bit halfway over this book because, again, I'm refilming this review. So I finished reading Scorched Roses a few days ago, and then I started reading Not in Love, and I've been reading it for a few days now, and so far I'm really enjoying it. This book is a little bit different from the other books by Ali Hazelwood that I read, and she does say that in her dedication, but she has an author's note that says that this book's a little bit more spicier than her other books, mainly because of the background of these characters. These characters are basically, they trauma bond. They have a lot of childhood trauma, so please check trigger warnings before you start reading this book if you decide to pick up this book. And so far I'm having a lot of fun reading Not in Love, and that's all I can tell you. Also, I'm even more excited to read Problematic Summer Romance because we've met Maya, who is the female main character from Problematic Summer Romance. We also met Connor, who is the main character from Problematic Summer Romance, and Maya, she's just so fun in this book. I really want to read her book now, and also I want to see her dynamic with Connor because they seem to be different. quite different, and I'm curious about their book, even more curious, but I also want to finish reading this book because I'm having a lot of fun, and I actually think I can even finish it today because I don't have much left. I know I read Ali Hazelwood's books quite fast because I just really love them. Hi, so I finished reading Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood, and Ali Hazelwood did it again. I really like this book. This is one of those books where I was really excited to read, but I was also kind of scared to read because I heard not some great things about it. I heard some people be quite mad about it, but also there are others that really loved it. So I was kind of scared to read this book and to not like it, but also at the same time I wanted to read it because it's Ali Hazelwood, and so far I loved every single thing I ever read from Ali Hazelwood, and this book's no different. It's just so fun and fluffy. It deals with very heavy topics, but without feeling like it gets too heavy in a way, but overall it's just a fluffy, funny, cute rom-com. I really like the characters. I liked Rue, I liked Eli, I liked them together, I liked the side characters, and I just had a lot of fun reading this book. I feel like it was a great book to read after Six Scorched Roses, just because it's different from Six Scorched Roses, but Not in Love, it's still, I don't know how to explain it. There's just something about the way Ali Hazelwood writes a story and the way she creates her books that does something to my brain. My brain really loves it. So I ended up giving Not in Love 4.5 stars because it didn't give me the 5 stars feels. This is definitely not my favorite book by the author, but it was still just amazing. But after reading Not in Love, now I'm desperate to read Problematic Summer Romance because I know that Problematic Summer Romance follows two characters that are not in love, and I heard really great things about Problematic Summer Romance and also those two characters. I just want to know more about those two characters separately, but knowing that there will be a romance between the two in that book, I'm even more curious. And I'm going to wait a little bit so I can cool down a little bit of my expectations. So there's a less of a chance that Problematic Summer Romance can disappoint me, but I want to read that book soon. After finishing Not in Love, I wanted something slightly different just because I love that book so much, but also I felt like I was ready to go back to reading something that had some more magical elements. So I picked up Red Rising by Pierce Brown, and so far what I know about this book is that it takes place in Mars, and there are different levels of people, different what is the word for it? There are different social statuses for people, and our main character who we are following, he's part of the Reds, which is the lower ranking status in the society, and they live on Mars, and their job is basically to mine this mineral on Mars. And guessing from what I've heard about this book, guessing from what I saw on kind of the prologue of this book, I feel like there is going to be a rebellion. And from the 2 pages that I read from this book, it seems really nice, it seems really interesting. I find it really interesting, and I need to go on Google, do some Google research and see how old the character actually is, because in this book it mentions that he's 16 years old, which is quite young, but also he does live on Mars, so I'm counting this as 16 years old Mars edition. So I need to look on Google to see how old that would be on Earth edition for this character. But again, I'm only 2 pages into reading the book. It seems really interesting, and I want to continue reading. I think it's quite funny that I decided to pick up a bookmark that is actually about a fluffy romance that I still haven't read. Kind of a different vibe between the bookmark and the book itself. But so far, It sounds interesting. Apparently there are 4 parts. The part 1 is Slave, part 2 is, I think, Reborn, part 3 Gold, and part 4, which in Portuguese is Ceifeiro, so maybe Scythe or something like that. I don't know. I have my book is Portuguese translation. Also there is a map detailing the world, and I'm curious about what map will mean in this book. And yes, we are going to go back to reading Red Rising because so far it sounds really interesting. I'm currently almost halfway through reading Red Rising by Pierce Brown, and I'm loving this book. I knew this was a very hyped up book. I knew people really enjoy this book. This book has really high ratings on Goodreads, Red Rising and the sequels, but I'm still very pleasantly surprised with how much I'm enjoying Red Rising. This book, it is a sci-fi, it is a space opera, but it is so political, but also it tugs on your heartstrings, because the things that happen with Daryl, who is our main character, it just makes you feel things. You feel for him, and then it's have the other characters, kind of like the villains, who you are supposed to kind of hate, but also it's not that you like them, it's not that I like them, but I feel for them as well, for their whole situation. And the more and more I learn about the society in Red Rising, the more I feel for the people living through it, from the people that are on the bottom of the social hierarchy and that are suffering all those atrocities, that are suffering such evil things. They do such evil things to these people. They make them live through something that's horrific, and they lie to them. But then you see the people at the top of the hierarchy, and also some of the things that they tell them and they make them believe, and then they make these people go through. I also really feel for them, because these people, you also get to understand that in some ways the other people, the people that are supposed to be the oppressors and that are in fact the oppressors, they're also oppressed by the system, and the things that they are going through, it's also not fair, and they shouldn't have to go through that thing. And for me, that's an art. That's really something that you need to have a lot of skill to be able to do, for you to be able to get a reader to not necessarily root for the bad people, for the evil people in this society, but for you to understand and be able to feel bad for everyone, for the people that are actually being oppressed, the people that are fighting this fight. You can feel for the hero, but you can also feel for the villain, because of the things that these people are going through. And this world is so complex, but also at the same time I find it easy to understand. Of course, there are things like the high-tech technology, the things that just don't exist in real life, or we are just starting to dabble in real life and are very much not at the level that they are portrayed to be in this book, in this story. But overall, I'm really enjoying it. I already want to get the sequel for the book. I want to get Golden Sun and Morning Star. I think it's the 3rd book, because I know I will want to continue to read the book, to continue to read the series. Something horrible needs to happen in terms of the storytelling or the writing, or some kind of position by the author, to make me not want to pick up the sequels, because so far this book is fantastic. And I just love how political it is so far, how we are not necessarily getting into the high action. We are just setting up, and I can see the way the author is setting up the story, setting up the society, setting up the characters, and I want to see where the story leads us for the rest of this series, because again, I'm just finding it to be incredible. I'm really enjoying it. At the same time, I'm entertained. I also really like the way the author writes the story. I like the way the author tells the story. I like the world building And so far there isn't nothing that I would complain about this book, which is rare. And I'm also kind of conflicted now because, as you can tell, my copy of Red Rising is translated to Portuguese because at the time where I got this, the English edition was out of stock. And now I'm questioning whether or not I should try and get the English edition for Golden Sun and Morning Star, because I would love to see the original words Pierce Brown will put on the story, the original words from Pierce Brown and the original way he crafted the story, rather than from the lens of a translator. But also at the same time, if I get it in Portuguese, one, it's easier for me because that's literally the language of my country. And if I go to a bookstore, most bookstores will probably have the Portuguese version, but the English edition would be a little bit more difficult to get because it's an important book, and also these books are so popular, so sometimes it can get kind of difficult to get super popular hyped up books at the time they're hyped up. But I still have halfway through the book to think about whether or not I will want to get the English edition or if I will want to get the translated version so it can match. And so if I ever try to force someone to read it, it would be easier to force them to read the book in the native language, than in English. It'd be easier to try and force someone to read Portuguese than in English. Hello, so I finished reading Red Rising by Pierce Brown and I loved it. I ended up giving it 4.75 stars, mostly because it just didn't give me that 5-star feeling, but it's a really good book and I was actually really impressed by it, and now I understand why this book is so popular. The characters are definitely not the perfect characters, but at the same time I do understand why the characters are the way they are. Some of the characters in this book, they are quite one-dimensional, especially our main character Daryl. He's kind of like two-dimensional. He doesn't seem to be as complex as I believe he is. It's just that considering his life experience and what he's going through, for me at least it makes sense the way he's acting. At times he can be quite insufferable and he can be quite full of himself, but I understand why he's feeling this way. And the same thing with the world. There are things about the world that are not perfect and that definitely it bothered me, but I do understand why they're like that. For example, there's quite a bit of misogyny in this book. The treatment of women in this book, in this universe, not the best, but at the same time I'm willing to give it a pass because I'm curious. I want to see what happens in the next book, because in my opinion it seems to be more something that is it's a characteristic of the world. Some people are not the best, and I'm curious to see develop in the next books. And yes, I really enjoyed Red Rising. It reads kind of like a fantasy. It doesn't necessarily read as a very sci-fi. It reads more like a fantasy and a little bit with a dystopia, and honestly it just feels like the kind of book that I would like to read, because in the past I used to read a lot of dystopias around like 2018, 2019. I read mostly dystopias, so it's also, for me, it adds that nostalgic feel just because it feels like a genre that I used to love and I used to read all the time. So yes, I ended up giving Red Rising 4.75 stars. I really enjoyed it and I do want to continue reading the next books in the series, but as I said in the previous clip that I didn't know which edition of the book I would get, because I didn't know if I would want to get the translated version as my edition of Red Rising is, so I can match it, or if I wanted to get the English version, an English edition of the books, because this way I would be able to read the original text from these books and see the way Pierce Brown actually wrote the story without relying on a translator. And by the way, the translation of this book, I think it's quite good. But that being said, the next book of the series, the one that we'll get, will be the first one I find, because I was looking everywhere online and in the stores near me, and Golden Sun is sold out. It's sold out everywhere. The only editions that I found online, they were not near me, so the shipping costs were considerable, so I would rather wait for them to come back in stock when it's near me than to pay for that amount of shipping. And Morning Sun, which is the third book in the original trilogy, I found one edition for sale. At least by the time I'm filming this video, by the time I publish it, it might have come back in stock. Also, another option that I had was just to order from another country, which is possible, but again, one, shipping, and second, just the time I'll need to wait for that. I think the book will come back in stock before the book would arrive for me. So, turns out I read really good books in this video. I read books I really enjoyed, so I had really good TBRs. Maybe I should read more of my TBRs, because there's a chance I'm choosing really good books to read. But yes, that's it for this video. If you liked it, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, and I hope to see you with another video very soon. Bye!